Hello and welcome back. In this video, we will learn about projection queries. A projection query is a query where you can specify which fields should be returned. 1 will display the field, 0 will hide it. Let us try an example. First, let us use the basic find statement. db period musicians period find. Hit enter, and we return with a list of all musicians that we have on record, information about their name, instrument, and the year they were born. We can add a projection to this query, and it will only return us with an ID and the information we are looking to find. For example, we can say db period musicians period find. Let's find instruments and name. Let's find instruments. Instrument, vocals. Also, let us find name. However, we want to use the projection query to find the name for us. We are not going to enter a name. We are only going to enter either 1 to display the name or 0 to not display a name. Let's enter 1. After you enter 1, close the statement and close it with a parenthesis. Verify that everything is correct. db musicians period find instrument vocals name 1. So what this query does, this query will scan the database. It will look for anyone in the musicians collection who has vocal skills. It will then list us the ID of that person, including their name, and that is the only 2 pieces of information it will return. We are asking the system to project the names of everyone who is a vocalist. Hit enter. And I have a syntax error. Syntax error, I'm missing a parenthesis. So where am I missing a parenthesis? Oh, I'm missing a parenthesis right at the beginning. So db period musicians period find parenthesis curly bracket instrument vocals name, and we are using 1 because we would like to output the name. Curly bracket parenthesis, and I also have a spelling error. This is why it's very good to check your code. Instrument, okay. Hit enter, and this time we are returned with the ID of 1 and 6. And ID 1 and 6 belongs to 1, Robert Van, who is a vocalist, and ID 6 to Jeff Kelly, who is also a vocalist. Now, if we wanted to edit this query to not output the ID, all we had to do is type the following command. db period musicians period find parenthesis open curly bracket instrument vocals ID This time we have to indicate the ID that we do not want the ID. Now automatically when you use a projection query, the ID is automatically outputted. If we do not want the ID in our output statement, we have to indicate we do not want the ID. So we type ID followed by a 0. 0 will eliminate the ID out of the query. Name 1. We still want the name. So we are looking with a projection query for vocalists. We are looking for vocalists and we are looking to output their name without their ID. Hit enter. And this time we are returned with the same 2 vocalists with their names, but without their ID. Now, when we are working with exclusions, and an exclusion is when we decide to not output a certain field, we cannot mix and match. We can only mix and match exclusions when we are working with the ID, because the ID is an automatic field. So we can only say no for the ID and yes for anything else. However, if we were looking for the name and for the instrument, we cannot say no to one and yes to the other. We can only say yes to both or no to both. Let us try an example. If we hit up once, up again, actually let us just retype it. Let us retype the entire command. So db period musicians period find, open parentheses, open curly bracket, instrument, vocals. This time, let's say 0 to the ID and zero to the ID and I'm thinking of a good query. How can we test this? Instead of using 0, let's use 1. Let's say 1 for the instrument, one. If we were to do 1 or 0, so let's do this. Let's do this. I'm sorry about that wait. I'm just looking at the database and I'm trying to figure out what is the easiest way to explain this. So let's say that we are, forget about the ID. Let's say we are looking for the instruments or anyone who has vocal skills. So we already have db musician period find instrument vocals. Then if we want to find the name, we have to type name 1. And if we also wanted to find born, we have to say born 1. Therefore, we can request 2 of the same values at the same time. We can request to have the data retrieved by using 1, or we can request to exclude it by using 0, but we cannot mix and match. We cannot have 1 for name and 0 for born, or either or. It's either we have 1 for both or 0 for both. The only time we can mix around with an exclusion is when we are playing with the ID field. And the reason why the ID is always automatically outputted in MongoDB. The only time the ID will not be a part of the output in MongoDB is if we use exclusion, if we exclude it by indicating 0. Hit enter. And this time we are returned with information about 2 players. Now if we hit the up button one more time and we backspace and we put 0, curly bracket, closing parenthesis, now we have a mix. We have name for yes, output the name, but for born we're saying no. If we mix it and we hit enter, we will get an error. Click enter. And it says projection queries. Projection cannot have a mix of inclusion and exclusion. It's either both are inclusive or both are exclusive. You can only mix inclusion or exclusion when we are dealing with the ID field and a different field name. In this video, we learned how to use projection queries. We also learned how to use inclusive and exclusive commands. In the next video, we will learn how to limit our queries and how to skip a particular part of a collection. I will see you then. Thank you.